everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me today. I'll be your astrologer. I hope you guys are doing well. I'm back at it with another video, and this is going to be slightly different than what we usually have. I wanted to start a new series on my channel where I talk to you guys more about the planets in action and how to better understand the zodiac. So I'll be featuring profiles both on the signs as well as the houses throughout this next year. If you guys like this content, you want to see more of it, make sure you click the bell button below. This will subscribe you to the channel and you'll be alerted to when we have new videos. So don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and drop me a message below and let me know, do you have any personal Aries placements like a sun, moon, rising, or personal planet? And what do you guys think about the archetype of Aries? What you guys may or may not know is that I don't just create content on YouTube, I also teach astrology. So if this inspires you to want to learn more, check out my website at beyondtheveiltarot.com. I have a beginner's astrology 101 course where you can study at your own pace, over 18 hours of content so you can really make sense of your natal chart and better understand what I'm talking about. And yeah, basically it's a beginner series, so you can kind of learn how to assess your natal chart. You can understand the archetypes better. And I'm giving you guys little snippets monthly from this course, so that way you guys better understand what's going on in the cosmos. So Aries is known as the first sign of the zodiac. It's a cardinal sign, which means it initiates new things, brand new beginnings. And it's also a fire sign, so it's very action-oriented. It's ruled by Mars. And many people may or may not know that it actually has connections to the god of war. Mars is the ruling planet for Aries, so it kind of makes sense. Aries was seen as the Greek god of chaos and destruction as well as war, found in the middle of the rage and pain of fighting. He's often depicted as a violent and bloodthirsty god, representing the more brutal and bloody side of battle, in contrast to Athena, who was represented more as strategic elements of warfare. Now, they were brother and sister, if you guys know your mythological lore. But in Greek myths, Aries was noted for his beauty and also for his courage, qualities which no doubt helped him win the affections of the Greek goddess Aphrodite, also known as Venus, with whom he had a daughter, and the god of love is known as the desire for Eros. Anyway, there's a whole family involved. But one of the most famous tales connected to Aries is one that's probably the best known, as when he encountered Hercules. Okay, so better known as, I guess Hercules was spelled differently. Now it has like a different spelling, and it's Hercules. This is basically a man and a god, right? They went kind of head to head and they dueled for dominance. And during the Trojan War, Aries supported the Trojans, sometimes even leading them into battle along with Hector. In later times, the Roman god was given many attributes of Aries, although it was typical of the Roman view of gods, which were less human qualities. Now, Aries is associated with the ram. I'm sure you guys have seen that symbol, and you may be wondering, well, why does the ram represent Aries? Well, it's because the ram essentially in astrology represents what's strong, determined, and ambitious. These are all qualities that we see associated with this sign. And because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, it has this kind of connection to the springtime, right? So at least here in the Northern Hemisphere, we see in March at some point when the sun ingresses into Aries, we see this new beginning. It's seen as a time of beginnings and growth. And the ram's curved horns symbolize growth and development, which are key themes for this particular sign. Now, in Greek mythology, the symbol of the ram was actually based on the chrysothalmus, the flying ram that rescued Pherex and Helle, the children of the Boeotian king Athmas, that provided the golden fleece. So the story highlights the ram's association with courage, strength, and determination, which are all qualities that Aries kind of embody. And furthermore, the ruling planet of Aries is Mars, the ruling god of war. So Mars's association with energy, action, and assertiveness, which are all traits that we see connected to Aries individuals. So the combination of Aries symbol, the fire element, and the ruling planet of Mars all kind of are connected to this very competitive nature. So obviously, we would see the ram kind of being the mascot for this particular sign. We also think about rams and how they have a tendency to go head to head, right? They kind of duel and they'll kind of run into things. Aries actually rules the head and the face. That's the kind of connection that it has. So that's another association with that particular symbol. Now the sign in general, right? When we think about the archetypes of Aries, like when I think about the zodiac, I don't just think about the sign and like the description of the sign. I think about how I can see that sign play out archetypally in the real world or in stories, in movies, books. So that I kind of created a list of the different archetypes that you may potentially see kind of associated with this. So obviously we have the warrior, right? Because, Aries represents the archetype of the warrior or the soldier. So the archetype of the warrior embodying strength, courage, and aggression is necessary for battle. As the god of war, he's often depicted with armor and weapons and ready for combat. Now, Mars also has connections and associations with weapons, things that are dangerous, things that are also sharp or piercing or heated. So we can kind of see Mars's connection with that energy, throughout astrology. But we also see the archetype of the destroyer because Aries represents the destructive parts of war, such as violence, chaos, and bloodshed. The archetype highlights the devastating consequences of conflict and the darker side of human nature. But we've talked a lot about war. We haven't really talked about more the passionate side that we see kind of connected with Aries. And I really consider one of the archetype of Aries as the lover. Despite the fearsome reputation, Aries also embodies the archetype of the lover, particularly in his passionate relationship with Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. This duality suggests a connection between love and war, and that both can inspire intense emotions and drive human actions. Mars also is associated with Aries, and it has connections to the element or the energy of like masculinity. We see Mars and Venus being these kind of star-crossed lovers in mythology. So Mars represents that very masculine, passionate kind of yang energy. I also consider Aries to be seen as like a rebel because he often throughout mythology goes against the wishes of his fellow gods and acts independently, showcasing the archetypal rebel. The aspect of his character emphasizes the unpredictable and sometimes chaotic nature of war, as well as the potential defiance against authority. Mars or Aries energy has this very don't tell me what to do kind of linear getting from point A to point B kind of personality. And then finally, I also see Aries has associations with the archetype of the father, or if you practice tarot, like the emperor. As the father of numerous children, okay, he's got a number of them. We've got Deimos, Phoebos, Harmonina. Aries embodies the archetype of the father figure. So his role highlights the complex and diverse aspects of his character, as well as the potential for both destruction and creation within the context of war. I really see Aries as somebody or like an archetype that's very fiery, very impulsive, very assertive, and primarily because this is an energy that is associated with new beginnings and taking action or moving forward. Because Aries is the sign of the self, its energy is very self-focused and it's focused on the individual and their personal goals. So when we combine that energy with Mars, planet of action, energy, and aggression, we see that we can really kind of focus on what we're most passionate about and really strive to achieve those goals. Now, Aries individuals are known for their courage, their confidence, and for their enthusiasm. They're natural-born leaders, and they're often the first to take on new challenges. But they can also be known for their impatience, their impulsiveness, and they can be prone to anger and frustration. So when I think about the positive kind of keywords and aspects relating to Aries energy, I think about being courageous, being confident, passionate, energetic, independent, ambitious, enthusiastic, optimistic, spontaneous, and determined. These are all the positive qualities that we see. And for each of the 12 signs, we really see pros and cons, right? There's polarity to both of, both sides of these particular energies and how they can be expressed. Now, some of the lower octave energies that we see associated with Aries can be aggression, impulsiveness, self-centeredness, impatience, being reckless, hot-tempered, stubborn, inconsiderate, arrogant, and confrontational. So obviously we can see some of these things, kind of come through in some horoscopes depending on, obviously the various aspects and how the planets or the houses are aspected in your horoscope. So this is just kind of a general overall. But one thing that really kind of prompted me to want to create this series is primarily because I see so many comments where people are going, well, my rising sign is in this, is in this degree or this sign, or, I have that planet, but it's in this house. So I wanted to create this to talk to you guys a little bit more in depth about the rising sign, the sun, moon, or rising kind of connected to Aries. If you guys catch my video on Thursday, I'm going to talk to you guys more about the connection to the first house. Many times people get kind of confused about how those energies work. But to put it very simply, the house in your natal chart represents the place which action is kind of taking place. The sign is the lens which you kind of view it through. And if you put a planet in that particular house, then you're going to kind of really see the archetype of that particular planet through the lens of that sign, right? So Aries is more the lens, right? We'll talk about the first house on Thursday, but we want to be really looking in this particular episode on, the sun, the moon, the rising in Aries. And also we're going to talk a little bit more about, obviously, planets in Aries. If you guys stay with me, I'll take you guys through the various planets in Aries and how they kind of behave. But the placement of the sun, moon, or rising in Aries can affect the expression of these traits very differently. So an Aries sun individual is likely to embody the Aries archetype in a much more straightforward and direct manner, versus the Aries moon, which is much more on an individual level, to have more emotional and reactive expression of Aries energy. And then an Aries rising individual may project that energy outwards and may appear very confident and assertive to other people. Now, truth be told, it can be difficult to spot someone's sun, moon, or rising just by looking at them, as these aspects of a person's astrological chart are not always visible. However, you can definitely look for certain characteristics and behaviors associated with an Aries sun, moon, or rising sign. For me, when I think about the Aries sun placement, regardless of where it's placed in the chart, people with an Aries sun are really known for being very fiery and energetic in their nature. Obviously, the sun is exalted in Aries, so it has a little bit more of an extra punch. They're often very confident, very ambitious, very assertive, and they have a strong presence and bold appearance. So they're embodying that energy of Mars, and you combine that energy with the sun, which is, kind of like the boss of the natal chart. Everything revolves around the energy of the sun, so it's kind of playing off of that regardless of the aspects. Now, an Aries moon, those with Aries moon signs tend to have a very strong emotional reaction and may be quick to anger or excite. You can generally kind of spot that because they can kind of get really, heated, and you'll see like the moon, which kind of waxes and wanes, their moods can kind of come very quickly and then they can kind of dissipate. So they tend to have very passionate and direct expressions of their feelings. And sometimes you'll also see some flushing of the face with an Aries moon. Both with the Aries moon and Aries rising, I've noticed that these people tend to get a little bit pink in the cheeks. And sometimes you can spot them also because they'll tend to have either a scar or they'll have like a birthmark somewhere on like the brow bone or like the forehead, because that's kind of like a marker that, is connected to Mars or to Aries. I'm sure you guys have known, I've told you guys this a lot, but I'm an Aries moon. And from the time that I was born, I've always had a birthmark right in the center of my forehead. My family always referred to it as my stork bite, but I didn't really learn about that until I was older, when I was really assessing the difference between the sun, moon, and rising, and really going in depth and learning about the various 12 rising signs, that was a general kind of marking that you'll see. And then finally, with Aries risings people, people with Aries risings are often very energetic and assertive when it comes to their approach with life. They tend to have a strong physical appearance and a very confident demeanor. And they're also very quick to take action, and they may be more competitive in their nature. Obviously, an Aries rising sign is going to be ruled by Mars. So if you're an Aries rising, it's really important to look at what house Mars is in, what sign it's in, what aspects are being made. But yeah, that's going to generally be your rising sign. I find that the Aries risings tend to be the most obvious when it comes to that particular sign versus the Aries sun or the Aries moon. Especially the Aries moons can be a little bit more difficult to spot. You have to really kind of get to know them and see how their personality kind of shines through, and really kind of see that spice comes out more in like a private kind of like relationship, or sometimes even in a public way. Now, when we think about planets in Aries, right? Planets are going to behave differently in different signs depending on, the planetary strength. If you guys work with planetary dignities, you know what I'm talking about. But when I think about Aries, I think about Mars being in its domicile, because Mars is connected to this particular sign. It means that this is the sign that it rules. So when a planet is in its domicile, it's in a position of strength and it can express its energy and qualities most effectively. So Mars in Aries is assertive, courageous, and energetic, making it a very powerful placement for taking action and pursuing goals. So even if you're not an Aries sun, moon, or rising, if you happen to have Mars in Aries, it's considered to be a very strong placement. And you want to see the house that Mars is located in to understand where you're striving to kind of achieve something, or where there may be a little bit more extra oomph or momentum. Now, the planet Venus is considered to be in its detriment in Aries. This basically means that Venus is moving through a Mars-based sign. And when a planet is in detriment, it's in a position of weakness, and it may struggle to express its energy or its qualities. So Venus in Aries can be impulsive and impatient when it comes to matter of love and relationships, and sometimes may have a difficulty expressing affection and tenderness. Now, obviously, this is like traditional astrology rules. Some astrologers may see some of this differently, but when you start to understand, planets and how they are performing in certain signs, it'll give you a better understanding of like your love language and how you are with relationships, or maybe even with money or with your career. This isn't saying that if you have a Venus in Aries, you're never going to have love. It just means that you approach love in a more Aries way. So you may find that relationships start very quickly. You may find that you're very passionate and you go after what you want. And you may kind of showcase a much more masculine side of approaching Venus-related topics. Now, the planet Saturn is considered in its fall in Aries. When a planet's in its fall, it's in a position of weakness, and it may struggle to express its energy and qualities. So Saturn in Aries can be overly cautious and hesitant. It may have a difficulty taking action and being, decisive when it comes to pursuing goals. Now, the reason why it's in its fall is because it's in the opposite sign, Libra, where Saturn tends to be exalted. So when we think of the energies of Saturn, Saturn is a planet that represents boundaries, karma, determination in a way, responsibility. And, Aries is the baby of the Zodiac. So when you place, Saturn in this sign, it means that on a very personal level, you're feeling challenges, whether that be physically, because Aries can be a physical sign, or in a sense of your independence. And sometimes it can materialize as kind of doubting yourself a little bit. So these planetary placements can provide much more information into your, particular personality and your strengths and your challenges. So you always want to take this into consideration when you're looking at these various planets. I preface this before going into the other planets and talking to you guys a little bit about that. Now I'm going to take you through the various planets. We're going to talk about pretty much everything but Pluto, because nobody alive has Pluto in Aries, and nobody alive currently has Neptune in Aries either. But I will touch on Neptune in Aries, considering we're getting ready to have Neptune's ingress into Aries these next few years. So let's talk a little bit more about the sun in Aries, right? So other than it being a strong sense of self and independence and very confident, it brings on a direct, assertive approach to life and a desire to be a leader. So think about the sun, right? The sun burns. It's kind of like the boss of the entire chart. If you have a sun in Aries, you want to be taking a look at what house is it placed in. That's going to give you an idea of where your more assertive energies are. It's going to really be about you. The sun deals with your own ego, your goals, your relationship to, father figures or bosses. This can also show where you're incredibly entrepreneurial or self-sufficient and willing to, kind of initiate new things. So obviously having that sun's exaltation is very beneficial depending on where you have it. And it may talk about where, part of your creative process is about something that you do on your own, something that is, just yours and yours only. Now, the moon in Aries, obviously has this need for emotional independence, right? Because we think of Aries as pioneering. So putting the moon, which is generally a feminine planet that's associated with Cancer, in the moon, in the sign of Aries, it can have a tendency to be very impulsive, okay? We can see being impulsive with decision making. We can also see that they're very prone to mood swings and a need for excitement and stimulation. Kind of similar as the same energy as having Mars in Cancer. It can be a little moody. But generally, Aries moons have a tendency to get very excited and then it kind of blows over. These can be people who are also very kind of feisty when it comes to relationship with women or with home or family members. They may feel like they need a sense of independence when it comes to how they're living or where they're living. And it can also be an indicator of relationship with women or, like mother figures in their life. It's pretty common with Aries moons to, talk about relationships that they had with a mother that was incredibly independent or very active. They may have been very encouraging or sometimes a little tough love when it came to parenting. They'll talk about that in terms of what they experienced growing up. Now, let's say you have Mercury in Aries, right? Mercury being the planet that rules the mind, communication, travel, writing, and learning. Having Mercury in Aries definitely makes somebody very quick-witted and they have a very direct kind of between the eyes communication style. It can make a person more assertive and more straightforward when it comes to their thinking and their speech. But also it can make somebody who's incredibly fast on their feet when it comes to, problem solving. It can be somebody who's also very entrepreneurial with business, somebody who is quick to initiate conversations or contracts. And they may also enjoy traveling alone. That can be something that they can see. I see a lot of people with Mercury in Aries that are always like into self-help and they're wanting to learn more about how to better themselves. I also see a lot of these people who are definitely interested in speeding up communications any which way they can. So they may be quick to respond to emails, text messages, and phone calls. And definitely there can be an interesting relationship that you can see with siblings with Mercury and Aries. Sometimes it's a love-hate relationship. Obviously, Mercury kind of represents two sides of a coin. And, Mercury has associations with cousins, siblings, cars, and also like neighbors. So sometimes there can be like a combative nature to the relationship that they see with some of these people, depending on the aspects, obviously, of Mercury. But I can always spot these people in conversation because they're really quick to be, sometimes to interject, that can happen. But there can also be a tendency for them to want to share what they think or what they're doing. Because remember, Mars, Aries energy is about action. So they'll be like, well, this is how I do it, or, get out of the way. Let me show you how to do this. Or let me show you how to kind of like put this thing back together. Or let me, edit that for you. They can have a tendency to want to really kind of show, their ideas and really inject them into conversations. Now, obviously, we talked a little bit about Mars and Aries, but Mars being in this sign is incredibly powerful. So if you have Mars in Aries, this is about having this strong, burning need for action. There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of assertiveness. This can definitely make a person very competitive and sometimes aggressive in their pursuits. But we can also see this in the charts of people who will, participate in athletic competitions, people who are also interested in sprinting or running. I see this pretty commonly in charts. And somebody who has just a lot of energy to expel. So you'll want to take a look at, what house other than Aries. You'll want to look at Scorpio as well, because Mars is going to have a connection with both of those houses. But unlike Scorpio, Aries is more about me. So having Mars in Aries is much more about your drive, your passion, what you're hoping to achieve. You know, I think of like Aries as like shooting off a gun, or, you know, like if you see people who are kind of like running a quick sprint, they want to be the first. They want to be the first ones to get from point A to point B. So if you have Mars in Aries, you want to look at what house it's in, because it talks about where you have a tendency to want to be the best, to want to be the quickest, want to show up the first, you want to be the champion, you want to be the winner. And it may provide you some more insight where there is just a natural, instinctual drive, that particular house where Mars is placed. Now, Venus in Aries obviously is going to bring the passion and the enthusiasm to relationships. It can definitely make a person much more assertive and direct in their approach to love and romance. While Venus rules relationships, it also has connections to personal style. So things like the colors that you wear, you may be drawn to bolder, more kind of dramatic colors like reds and bronzes and things that might be a little bit more athletic. But it can also talk about your relationship to your self-esteem and your finances. Certainly, Venus and Aries people can have a tendency to be very impulsive when it comes to not just relationships, but investments. I don't think Aries gets enough credit for being intuitive, because it is the first sign and it just knows instinctually what it's supposed to do. Like, I think about Aries and the connection to Mars, and it reminds me a lot of like ants, right? Ants, they just know, you know, somehow they find a way to be able to get out of the nest and, you know, find water, find food, find sugar, find their way into your pantry, right? That's a very Mars energy. So when I think about Venus and Aries, it's just knowing what they want and going after it. But genuinely, they seem to really like the chase, right? They like the chase. They may have a tendency to like the passion, the excitement, the thrill. You know, after all, Aries is also seen as kind of like the hunter. So they definitely like to chase and go after what they want. So they want to feel like something is constantly exciting and brand new. And this can be positive because it can mean that, you know, in some cases they love a damsel in distress or they love, you know, going after something that may require them to go through a series of like obstacles and events to be able to get the romantic partner. But in a sense of money, I think that this can make them incredibly entrepreneurial. It can make them very self-sufficient with funds. They can be self-made people with this placement. And like I said, the connection that it has to their style, I find that Venus and Aries will be much more attracted to partnerships that have either more of like an athletic build. Sometimes it can be somebody who doesn't mind, you know, kind of getting a little aggressive and a little spicy and a little feisty. They may like that rather than somebody who is just kind of easygoing. And they may also really enjoy, when it comes to relationships, sharing in some kind of competitive nature. You know, I think about, you know, clients that I've seen, friends that I've seen who have that, and they have a tendency to really like getting into like competitive game night, or maybe they like going to sporting events together. That can be something that they enjoy within their relationships. Now, if you have Jupiter in Aries, Jupiter in Aries brings a sense of adventure and optimism for life. It can make a person more confident and more ambitious when it comes to their pursuits, and it can lead to a desire for new experiences and growth. Now, Jupiter in this sign, because Jupiter has associations, you know, with Sagittarius naturally, which is another fire sign. I think of this as people who love traveling. They love experiencing new places. They don't mind sometimes, you know, going their own way or going off to college, or they don't often mind, you know, learning things about new cultures and embracing that because they can see it as something that's like an adventure and very exciting. I think of Jupiter also as luck. And so Jupiter in Aries may have this kind of mentality that's like luck is just, you know, it's not real. It's something that you have to go and you have to make your own luck. And I also think about the way that they view life, and that life is meant to be experienced. Everything is meant to be big, that you are meant to kind of grow as a person. And the more that you travel and the more that you learn about the world, the more you're going to kind of figure out who you are and be able to kind of share your vision with other people. So I definitely like Jupiter in Aries. I think it can be a very dynamic energy, and it can make people incredibly ambitious. Now, if you have Saturn in Aries, this can bring a sense of responsibility and discipline to the assertive nature of Aries. So it can make a person more cautious and sometimes more strategic in their actions. And it can also lead to a need to really focus on structure and order. We think about Saturn and its natural connection to Capricorn and Aquarius, that it can be very much about your goals, who you are as you get older, what your status is or your reputation, what your career is. So when you put Saturn in this particular sign, it really kind of teaches you that without your own sense of hard work, determination, willingness for, holding yourself accountable, and seeing that your goals come to fruition, it really starts with you. Some people with this placement may feel like it's challenging to feel confident or to make headway in their career. It can also kind of represent somebody who can mature a little bit later in life, especially as they're approaching, their Saturn return, as you're getting closer to like 29 or 30. That can be like a real growing up period. And you can realize that you sometimes may be the person who needs to get out of your own way, right? I've seen that a ton of times with Saturn in Aries. However, this can also really teach somebody a lot about their body, and it can teach them the need to be able to, practice something when it comes to body maintenance, when it comes to also pumping the brakes sometimes and not jumping into situations head first without properly assessing whether or not it's good for them on a personal level. Especially when we think about Saturn's, connection to Capricorn, and that's 10 signs from Aries. So it's like, is this the career for me? Is this the path I'm supposed to take? Or the opposition to the exaltation in Libra, which can indicate that, true relationships that are the best for us are ones that also allow us to have a sense of independence. So it's been a theme now that I'm kind of getting into doing some Saturn return readings for people who have Saturn in Aries, because it's coming up here soon. I've noticed for a lot of you guys that there has been a sense of holding yourself back, or maybe feeling like you're having to dilute yourself a little bit because of professional and romantic relationships. Now, what about Uranus and Aries? We've experienced this in recent years. We have seen with Uranus and Aries that brought a great deal of changes. I mean, it brought the birth of the selfie, right? Everybody was taking pictures of themselves. I think that was Uranus's connection to networks. But Uranus and Aries can bring a sense of rebellion and, being unconventional and assertive. So we see kind of a blend of the two energies. And it can make a person more independent and more innovative in their approach to life. And it can lead to a desire for personal change and progress. When we think about Uranus and the connection to Aquarius, we think about our goals and also our collective groups. So somebody with Uranus and Aries may feel like they stick out like a sore thumb in their social group, or they may be a leader when it comes to, new innovations with socializing and connections to other people. They can sometimes feel like the ringleader, but they can also feel like the Mad Hatter, where they are just kind of like bringing, dramatic changes into the lives of individuals because of their own unusual kind of take on life. Now, Uranus and Aries can also bring up such an intense need for personal freedom that until you learn how to better figure out what you want and what's going to actually, give you happiness, or what's going to give you freedom, it can sometimes create some challenges with social relationships or with partnerships, because Aries is independent in this sign, and it's not willing to sacrifice or give up its independence. And if it feels like it's being threatened, then there can definitely be some kind of hot and cold moments with relationships to other people. And then finally, we have Neptune in Aries. So like I said, nobody alive right now has either Neptune or Pluto in Aries, because those particular planetary cycles are just so long. But I did want to include Neptune in Aries because we're going to be having this ingress in 2025 and 2026. So I know some of you guys wonder how this will materialize collectively, but also I already have clients that are asking about how this is going to impact children that are being born next year. So when we think of Neptune and the traditional connection to Pisces, putting Neptune in Aries is about bringing a sense of idealism and inspiration to the assertive nature of Aries. So it can kind of feel like you're pouring water on an open flame, that it kind of tempers or brings down the heat that we see with this particular sign. And it can make a person much more compassionate and intuitive when it comes to their approach to life, and it can lead to a desire to help other people and to personally make a difference. I think about moving forward with this Neptune and Aries transit that it's likely going to materialize as people kind of starting to drop this illusion that we are all separate. We are going to start to realize that we are actually all one, and Neptune has this kind of blending effect of energies. So I'm hopeful that that's what will happen, but I feel like in this particular, planetary, energy, it's also probably going to bring us back to a sense of completely different spiritual and religious or ritualistic, habits. Neptune has connections to organized religion and also secret societies and groups and things revolving around both mental and physical health care. So watching Neptune ingress into this sign means that I think individuals are going to be taking it upon themselves to decide who or what they want to worship. We may see a return to some very unusual kind of practices. We may see some practices that are being brought back after many, hundreds, if not thousands of years, where we are developing relationships with our own gods and deities, or we're seeing that connection that we have to a higher power within us. But I also feel like it's going to be about individuals really needing a strong sense of understanding when it comes to our, place in the universe, when it comes to our relationship with a higher power, and definitely learn how to be more compassionate human beings and individuals, right? Aries is the individual, and how that's impacting the collective. Now, obviously, it's going to be kind of like a different spin because we will see Saturn come through there as well. So Saturn and Neptune are going to move at the same time, creating a new Saturn-Neptune cycle. So that's going to be rather unusual because we have not seen one of those since it happened in Capricorn in late 1989, early 1990. So that in itself is a whole other video. But I do think that this is going to be a really, really big turning point for people realizing that sometimes where escapism or dependency on drugs or alcoholism or fear is actually like us getting in our own way. So I think that Neptune and Aries can also feel the effects of, not being able to see through their own fog or confusion, and that can inhibit them from feeling like they're able to achieve or reach their goals. And certainly it's going to be about that vision that they hold for themselves. And it can be idealistic, but it can also be something where they're using that to be able to kind of see through some of the illusions out in the world and realize and recognize who they truly are. And then finally, the North Node. The North Node in astrology, it talks a lot about your dharma. So it's, if you believe in reincarnation, why you came here, why you have reincarnated, what your soul purpose and lesson is. That North Node placement in Aries represents a new beginning and a call to action. So it's a time to really, in this lifetime, focus on one's life and to assert yourself in new and bold ways. To better understand your North Node, you don't just want to know what sign it's in, that's how it's expressed, but you want to know what house it's in, because that's going to show you very specifically what area of your life you are actually applying yourself in, and where you're being more fierce and bold and independent, and where you're willing sometimes to have a little bit of conflict or a little bit of challenge. Now, if you have your natal South Node in Aries, it's going to be the opposite of that, because your North Node would be in Libra. But having your South Node in Aries may be an indicator, especially if you look at Mars in your chart and its aspects, that you're carrying that energy of the warrior from a past life. You're carrying that energy of, fighting and being independent and strong and assertive and bold from your past life. So the goodies that can come from that South Node can definitely be somebody who's very courageous. But it can also mean with your North Node in Libra that you want to integrate more of your Venus placement. So rather than being independent and maybe even potentially somebody who was like nomadic in a past life or combative, you're learning to integrate more of like that North Node, which is going to be more relationships, partnerships, harmony, and balance. So you might feel like you're bringing a little bit of like feistiness and some spice from your past life into this current incarnation. I hope that's helpful in giving you guys a little bit more understanding in the energies of Aries, especially as you look at your own chart. Like I said, I'm going to continue this series throughout this next year, and we'll be touching on both the planetary, or I guess like the zodiac archetype of each of the 12 signs, the planetary correlation, and then we'll be doing a separate video that's going to talk about the house. So if you guys join me on Thursday, we're going to be touching on the rising and the first house in your natal chart, what it means. We're also going to discuss the 12 houses at later dates. So you guys will have to kind of stay with me and see how this goes throughout this next year. I think it's so helpful to be taking a look at this. Obviously, as we're coming into the solar eclipse in Aries and a Mercury retrograde in Aries, all of us could probably better understand ourselves and this energy a little bit more. Once again, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Let me know where Aries is in your chart. And if you happen to be a sun, moon, or rising in Aries, let me know what you think. I'll catch you guys back here on Thursday. Until next time, take care.